Imagine stepping into a middle-class living room in the 1980s. The kind of space that at first glance might look like just a cozy family room, but in reality reveals much more about the dreams, values, and social hopes of the people who lived there. These living rooms weren't merely places to gather and watch television. They were carefully curated stages where comfort, status, and identity played out quietly but powerfully. But here's where it gets really interesting. Beneath every piece of furniture and knickknack was a story, a subtle social statement or aspiration that most of us never consciously noticed at the time. Let's stroll down memory lane and unpack 9 iconic items that were almost guaranteed to be found in 1980s middle-class living rooms and why they mattered so much. The towering wooden entertainment center. Do you remember those massive wooden units that often dominated an entire wall? These huge pieces of furniture housed bulky television sets, VCRs, and sometimes even record players or cassette decks. Some were outfitted with glass doors, showcasing an extensive VHS collection or decorative ornaments that rarely moved. Occasionally, they even featured mirrors at the back to create the illusion of greater size. These weren't just space-saving units, they were the heart of family life, the central gathering point that symbolized togetherness. Having one signaled that a family was investing not only in technology and entertainment, but also presenting an image of prosperity and having it all. It was a way to show off both practical and cultural capital, reinforcing ideas of middle-class success. 2. The bold floral or plaid couches. Nothing screams 1980s quite like a couch clad in either floral prints or loud plaids. These pieces were anything but subtle. Their textured fabric shouted cozy and practical, designed to endure the day-to-day wear from kids, pets, and countless family gatherings. While often feeling scratchy or having cushions that enveloped you like a soft trap, these couches were a symbol of resilience and grounded sensibility. The patterns cleverly masked spills, dirt, and general mess, which was perfect for busy households. This choice reflected deeper values around durability and the realistic demands of family life, rather than fragile luxury. A glass cabinet full of fancy glassware rarely touched. Almost every home featured a cabinet or hutch with glass doors, filled with crystal goblets, dainty wine glasses, and maybe an ornate decanter. Items mostly reserved for special occasions that perhaps happened only on holidays, if at all. The glassware was less about everyday use and more about projecting an image of sophistication and aspiration. These displays subtly communicated a family's cultural refinement and desire for upward mobility, even if the reality was more modest. They were the silent signals of class and style everyone wanted to convey to guests. 4. The landline phone with an impossibly long cord. Picture a beige or off-white phone, often mounted on the wall, with a curly cord that stretched across the room. This device was both a communication tool and the stage for 1,000 teenage dramas. That extra-long cord allowed pacing, secret conversations in the hallway, or a dramatic slam after a fierce argument. The landline dictated social rules. Call length was monitored, phone time was rationed, and certain moments, like dinner, were phone-free zones. Unlike modern smartphones that we carry everywhere, this shared family phone was a communal resource wrapped in social etiquette, reflecting connection but also control. 5. Houseplants nestled in macramé hangers. The 1980s had a particular affection for greenery, especially spider plants hanging in those knotted, handmade macramé holders. This wasn't just about decoration. Indoor plants brought a sense of life and tenderness to living rooms dominated by heavy furniture and fabric. Caring for plants was one of the few ways families engaged daily in something akin to mindfulness or nurturing before the term was popularized. These plants signaled that the household was thriving and cared for, a subtle, living metaphor for stability and domestic pride. 6. The framed family portrait over the mantel. Most middle-class homes proudly displayed a family photo, sometimes a formal Sears studio portrait, other times a more candid snapshot, usually positioned prominently above the fireplace mantel. This was far more than decoration. It was a declaration of unity and belonging. The portrait told visitors and family members alike, "This is who we are, together." Whether the family was wearing matching sweaters or just gathered for the moment, that image anchored identities amid a decade filled with social changes. It served as a comforting visual symbol of permanence and familial strength. 7. A coffee table stacked with magazines. Magazines like Reader's Digest, National Geographic, and Good Housekeeping often crowded coffee tables alongside brochures or catalogs. These collections served dual purposes. They were conversation starters and subtle testimonials of the family's interests and intellect. The curated pile suggested a sense of worldliness, curiosity, and a desire to stay connected culturally, even if travel or grand adventures were beyond reach. Guests could flip through these magazines, making the living room welcoming, while also signaling that this family valued information and sophistication. 8. The handmade Afghan blanket, typically crocheted by a loved one. The Afghan blanket draped across the back of the sofa was more than a practical layer of warmth. It represented comfort, familiarity, and emotional connection. This tactile softness helped create an environment of safety and relaxation. Psychologists today highlight the calming effect of such textures on mental well-being, meaning these blankets were early forms of what we now understand as sensory self-care. Further, these handmade pieces tied families to their roots, symbolizing love and continuity through generations. 9. The decorative potpourri bowl. Last but not least, potpourri bowl, often sitting on a side table and occasionally dusty, offered a faint scent of cinnamon, rose, or spice. While it likely contributed little to freshening the air, potpourri enhanced the perceived sophistication of a room. It represented attention to detail and an effort to create a warm, cared-for atmosphere through sensory cues. Even today, catching a whiff of similar scents can instantly transport people back to their grandparents' homes, showing how powerful such small touches can be in crafting memory and ambiance. Final reflections. Looking back, the middle-class living rooms of the 1980s were so much more than simple spaces decorated with dated furniture and accessories. They were complex psychological landscapes filled with symbolic objects, each telling stories about aspiration, belonging, durability, and comfort. Families balanced everyday practicality with dreams of status and refinement, creating environments that reflected both who they were and who they hoped to become. And here's an intriguing question. Isn't that still the goal of our living spaces today? Though the styles have evolved, the underlying impulse to blend comfort with image, function with aspiration remains just as strong. What do you think? Are your living room choices today driven more by practicality, status, or a hopeful mix of both? Feel free to share your thoughts and memories. Let's continue the conversation.